7th chapter, The Power of Eye Contact, except when it is impossible. Eye contact is a very effective means of communication that should be used in almost all communicative situations. It's important to socialize with strangers in job interviews, for example, or when expressing strong emotions like happiness, anger, or fear. There are various types of eye contact, each with its own meaning. Emotions and thoughts can be exchanged through visual contact, which often supports verbal communication and strengthens the bond between sender and receiver. We explain the ins and outs of eye contact in psychology, as well as the different types and their meanings. At Psychology Online, what is eye contact and why is it important? The situation in which two people's gazes are fixed on the other's eyes is referred to as eyes. This is a particularly effective mode of communication, as it is a clear example of nonverbal communication. This eye contact allows us to both interpret and transmit other people's emotions. If we see someone with a flushed face and a frown, we can assume that their gaze denotes a lot of anger or rage. As a result, a link is established between their gaze and ours, making it much easier for us to interpret their anger and even determine the degree or intensity of it. As a result, eye contact is regarded as a valuable source of emotional information. The value of direct eye contact. It's no coincidence that eye contact has become so important in communication because it allows for so many interactions between the receiver and the sender. When it comes to active listening or expressing emotions, it's critical. It's also necessary to discuss the importance of eye contact as a prerequisite for communication to begin. When we address or want to address someone, we usually unconsciously look them in the eyes, capturing their attention and signaling that we want to communicate with them. When it comes to establishing and respecting speaking turns, eye contact is also important. If someone else is talking to us and suddenly stops and looks at us, they are most likely expecting us to intervene. Furthermore, different types of eye contact must be distinguished, ranging from the most intense and prolonged to the curious, or, on the other hand, the absence of eye contact or elusive glances. All of this will be covered in the following section. In psychology, there are various types of looks. Others can be viewed in a variety of ways. Now we'll look at a few examples and their typical meanings. It should be noted, however, that the meaning of a look can be difficult to categorize because it is influenced by a variety of personal and contextual factors, as well as who interprets it. The different types of gazes in psychology and what they mean. Intense and prolonged eye contact indicates that the interlocutor is paying attention to what he wants to say or how he is acting. It's usually accompanied by a slight brow lift. However, if this look is too aggressive or pushy, it can be difficult to pull off. Keeping your eyes off you. What does avoiding eye contact imply? When someone avoids looking another person in the eyes, it's usually because they're feeling threatened, insecure, or embarrassed. In psychology, looking away denotes insecurity or shame. Eyes dilated. When someone looks at us with narrowed eyes, it's usually because they're on the defensive, distrustful, or expecting an attack. Excessively blink. This behavior is usually caused by a high level of nerves, which can indicate restlessness, shame, or even attraction to the person with whom they communicate. If that's the case, the following advice on how to relax before a first date might be useful. Pupils that are dilated. When something interests us, our students' pupils dilate. We could even say fascinating. This usually happens when the other person surprises you or piques your interest in them. Pupil dilation is a physiological response that occurs when a person is attracted to something. Blushing is another fascinating physiological reaction. Learn why we blush when we are embarrassed in this article. Science backs up what we say through our gaze. The eyes, it is said, are the mirror of the soul, and if there is any part of the body that must carry that emotional charge, it is undoubtedly the eyes. What does the expression convey? It is said that the face is a mirror of the soul, and the eyes, without a doubt, must bear the brunt of that emotional burden. They usually let us know if we are tired or sad, happy or angry, in love or spiteful, by being more or less expressive. The eyes have been the subject of songs and poems, and they are known for the beauty they bring to the face. If we want to turn off the world, we close them. If we don't want anything to escape, we keep them open. We cover them in makeup, hide them behind sunglasses, and even use contact lenses to change their color. But those aren't the only things it can do. The eyes are an important part of nonverbal communication, and there is no limit to what we can say with them. Ronald E. Riggio, a former professor at Claremont McKenna College and a professor of leadership and psychological organization for well-known businessman Henry R. Kravis, agrees. He claims in an article published in Psychology Today that he drew on scientific research to extract some interesting data about the power of the gaze and what we transmit through it. Its main points are summed up in 5 bullet points. Contact excites the senses. Arousal is elicited by staring into another person's eyes, though its meaning varies depending on the situation. When a newcomer stares at us for an extended period of time, We may perceive it as a threat and feel fear or anguish. This is a common reaction in animals who feel threatened when a human looks them in the eyes. It is also possible to become sexually aroused as a result of eye contact and misinterpret it as a request for sex. The sincerity of a smile is revealed by the eyes. Smiles that represent genuine happiness are distinguished from fake smiles that are used to fake happiness or cover any other emotion. According to psychologist Paul Ekman, observing the gaze of the person in question is a good way to tell one from the other. When a person smiles honestly, the eyes narrow and crow's feet form at the ends. A sign of interest is pupil dilation. Our pupils dilate when we are interested in something, as Riggio explains. Apart from that, the dilation makes us look sexier. The professor cites a study in which the size of the pupils in a photograph of the same woman was artificially altered. Both photos were compared, with the exception of the size of the dilation, and those with larger dilations were deemed more attractive than those with normal-sized pupils. A sign of love is a reciprocal gaze, according to research on topics related to love and attraction. Looking at and observing each other closely is almost a guarantee that the people involved are in love. Deception arises from eye contact. Eye contact and looking at something is usually a sign of interest, love, affection, or derivatives, as previously stated. As a result, a liar rarely looks you in the eyes, and this is a key feature of his nonverbal communication. However, research has shown that people lie more and make more eye contact. According to Riggio, they devote more time and effort to persuade their interlocutor of something that isn't true. The truth teller, on the other hand, is under no obligation to prove anything and may become distracted if he is not looking at us. The four views that work when it comes to nonverbal communication. We often hear how important it is to understand nonverbal communication in order to understand what our interlocutors are saying. This is what your eyes are telling you. What we communicate is who we are, because of what we say and how we move, gesture, look, and even smile. They accompany us, follow us, and believe us. Your body language reveals your true identity. The secrets to effective communication. Espasa, Fran Carrillo discusses some of the key concepts we need to understand about nonverbal language in order to understand everything our interlocutors suggest, and know how to act in order to communicate exactly what we're interested in. In the excerpt we've gathered, he discusses the messages we send and receive through our eyes. It brings up the existence of 4 different types of looks, as well as their meanings and how to recognize them. What your appearance tells others. He was an intelligent development manager for a multinational company in the insurance industry, but his inability to manage his appearance caused him to lose business opportunities on a regular basis. When the moment of truth arrived, however, he would divert his pupils to the point where the interlocutor began to wonder if he wasn't joking. Their fear breeds fear. When he became tense, his eyes dilated more than they needed to, and when he arched or wrinkled, his brows lost their precision, highlighting his face's latent and obvious lack of control. According to psychology, our appearance is linked to our emotional state. In our interactions with the general public, we face a challenge in which 2 gazes meet, and ours is almost always trapped by fear and a constant sense of ridicule. You can't help but look because eye contact is the most important factor in establishing a connection with the listener. It's the simplest way to get you to take part in your intervention. A lack of mastery of the gaze will cause us to express discomfort and discomfort to those who listen to us. A complete mastery of it will transform us into moment stage winners, and it's because the eyes, as part of the facial language, often express what the message isn't. We always say that we distrust someone who does not look at us when they are telling us something, whether important or not, who averts their gaze only once or twice, but always at the precise moment when they are telling us exactly what we want to hear, what they are for. We've received a summons. You can't help but look because eye contact is the most important factor in establishing a connection with the listener. Insecurity is communicated by that evasive gaze, like an edgy look, especially when accompanied by a frown, which leads us to focus our attention on the paper, the table, or any other secondary aspect of the room or object in the environment rather than initiating that visual contact with the audience, who is, after all, the true main actor of the intervention. Similarly, we don't believe someone who stares at us until his iris tears, or who averts his eyes in a conversation more than once without explanation. Exaggerated blinking falls under the category of subtle courtship. That moment of seduction between a man and a woman, 2 men or 2 women, which Flora Davis explains well in her masterpiece on nonverbal communication. To help him comprehend what I meant, I use the following analogy. When you interact in public, your gaze should serve as a beacon for ships docking in port. If you're writing for a large group, you should concentrate on a continuous lighting sweep. You're moving your gaze from side to side, without focusing on anyone in particular, at a rate dictated by the rhythm of your message, until you decide to direct your look upon someone in particular. The slower you speak, the slower your glance should be. If you do this, keep in mind that the attention of people present will be drawn to you since they will notice a noticeable slowdown in your communication speed and wonder why. It makes it easier for you to specify your main message and, from that physical starting point, Extend it to the rest of those present. The contagion effect. Fixing your eyes on a specific person means nothing regardless of whether you feel comfortable looking at them. You do it because it makes it easier for you to specify your main message, and from that physical starting point, extend it to the rest of those present. The contagion effect. The 4 faces of strength. I entrusted her with a strategy popularized by Ruben Turienzo, who will not mind if I use his original manner of qualifying the 3 most common looks that intervene in a communication between 2 or more people. Once I was convinced I understood it, he developed a powerful gaze control and management approach to produce the desired effect in an audience when communicating as a world benchmark for charisma and personal influence. I obtained it so that I could use it in his internal presentations, meetings with VIP and strategic clients, and even open conferences in front of a variety of audiences. I added a 4th look to Ruben's 3 suggestions. I now hand them up to you, my reader. You can learn to look different without losing an iota of your communicative power by using the techniques below. Though I caution that these strategies are best used in situations where you must communicate in front of a small group of people, about 15 or 20, because they have no place in large audiences of 100, 200, or 1,000 people, and their effect is not as long-lasting. The butter has an appealing appearance. We are classified in this way because it resembles the movement we make when spreading bread slices. When we don't want to focus on anything in particular, we sweep our eyes from one side to the other in a sweeping motion. The goal is to elicit participation from the entire audience during our presentation. When using this type of gaze, the speed of our words should be moderate to high, fluid, but not to the point of obstructing their accurate understanding and intelligibility. Similarly, our body language must adjust to that beat, and we must gesticulate just enough such that the word and the gestural movement are in sync. The cheese appears to be delicious, melted, name derived from the analogy of a piece of pizza glued to its cardboard container by a blob of melted cheese that, no matter how much we stretch it, will not break until the pizza slice reaches a height where it has no alternative but to lose its roots. When we converse in public, we must use this look when our voice slows down. We've moved on from that comprehensive view, in which everyone felt involved and we drove comfortably at a controlled speed, to another that has a slower pace of speech, in which we've already increased the number of seconds we devote to each one, and time has slowed. For a few moments, we stare at each other's eyes. This alerts our receptors to the fact that something significant is about to happen because they notice how our body begins to emit more leisurely movements, less gesticulated, and with near perfect control. We flow from serenity, and the pauses become more noticeable. It's the build-up to what's to come, the appearance of caramel. What follows is the gaze that serves to fix the messages, like that candy you take out of your mouth to later collect it from the paper in which you placed it and notice that it remains attached to it and that tearing it from its base is difficult. To focus attention, and to elicit memory, we've already scanned the room with our butter look, and with those melted cheese eyes, we've focused the attention of those here. And now it's time to create communicative tension. We pause in our discourse, straighten our posture, and fix our sight on a single individual. Why does it seem to catch our eye more than others? Is it because we enjoy it? No, since our message will be more effective that way. When we feel it, the message, with our bodies and declare it with our mouths, the first is insufficient. It's better if you use your face and body to back up what you're saying. When you concentrate on someone, the alternating movement of light ceases, and your words are delivered at the appropriate speed to all of your interlocutors. You're telling them, hey, this is crucial. You can ignore the rest. But if you remember this piece, I've stated it that way, and I've staged it for you in this elaborate manner because I consider it to be the most important aspect of my intervention, the one you should not overlook. It's a powerful look that instills confidence in those who know how to convey it effectively. The look of bubblegum, finally, and in a later phase, we arrive at this 4th variant. The gum is chewed, stretched, and savored. But there comes a point when overexposure, the time to play with it, tires out your jaw, your gaze, and dulls your power to persuade. When you notice that, over time, their gaze begins to exhibit fatigue. They deflect, drop, or concentrate it on another object or another person in the room. You know it's time to stop focusing their attention on your nonverbal message, eyes included. At that point, you must wrap up the message and, if necessary, your involvement. Ways to use eye contact to achieve what you want in a meeting. Have you ever been in an interview and felt like you were wasting the interviewer's time? It's a universal fact that good, attentive listening goes hand in hand with good eye contact. And we often find ourselves staring intently at individuals discussing significant things. Not only is eye contact a good indicator of someone's interest, but it also has the ability to convince. Consider an interview as an opportunity to impress someone new. It's the same as meeting a new acquaintance or attending a networking event. The only difference is the possibility of prior training. The key to making a great first impression is to become a pleasant someone who is aware of his or her environment. You want to appear engaged but not obsessive. From the time you come into a room, the best method to be personable and inspire confidence is to make eye contact, because 93% of first impressions are formed based on nonverbal communication. Body language is an important part of the equation. These pointers can help you make a good first impression on the next person you meet. Make a positive first impression. During business meetings, maintain steady, fluid eye contact. Maintain a casual eye contact that is warm, connected, and engaged, but not fixated all of the time. When you stare someone in the eyes, you make everything feel awkward and unnatural. Let's imagine you're having dinner with your pals and you're telling 4 people a story, but your gaze is only on one of them. It might be irritating to others who aren't getting the benefit of your gaze because it makes them feel excluded from the occasion. If there are more than one person in the room, you will want to make casual eye contact with each of them, moving from one to the other, ensuring that everyone feels included, and leaving a lasting impression. Channel how you feel when you're conversing with someone who appears to be interesting to you. Build a foundation of trust. The eyes are the soul's window, so when you're meeting someone new, make eye contact to pique their interest and energy. It's easy for people to trust you when you have that kind, open, willing, and welcoming touch in your eyes. Your energy is directly proportional to your level of confidence. When you meet a potential client, you must establish who you are from the time you enter the premises. So make eye contact with everyone and greet the person who welcomes you at the front desk with a polite greeting. People want to hire people they like and trust, so scan everyone in your path for the right vibes to set you up for a successful encounter. Present. You must be present and aware of what you observe, and you must be able to exhibit these abilities in a meeting. Take a quick scan of the area to see if there's anything fascinating on the other person's desk. You can even mention it and make sure you give it your full attention. When the meeting is over, this can help the person remember you better. I stepped into an agent's office for an interview when I was an actress who had recently relocated to Los Angeles and was swept away by the images on the walls. He had captured those beautiful photographs while on safari in Africa. It turned out, we started talking about his images before I even sat down, and I truly admired his work. The fact that I was engaged in his part gave our chat a distinct and pleasant tone. Show that you're interested. When someone observes a sparkle in your eyes, they can deduce that you are interested in something and establish a connection that will last for both work and non-work related topics. A customer of mine who specializes in real estate acquisitions recently contacted an owner he knew had previously served as a senator. My client asked real questions regarding the Vietnam War throughout their conversation, and the former senator was grateful for my client's interest in his personal life, which allowed them to quickly connect, build rapport, and establish trust. With piqued interest and direct eye contact, they discovered a point of agreement that could eventually be transformed into business. Anxiety reduction. Get in the habit of gazing up or to the side rather than down. When you gaze down, you're displaying insecurity. When you glance up, you are boosting your energy, remaining optimistic and curious, and remaining open to receiving the energy of others. When it comes to eye contact, looking up encourages connection and development, whilst looking down causes dread. Let's imagine you're asked a question during an interview that you can't answer. Instead of looking down and isolating yourself from the other person, glance up to give the impression that you're thinking freely and confidently. And Cuddy, a body language specialist, delivered a fantastic TED Talk about the power of presence and how to stimulate the production of neurotransmitters and endorphins in your body simply by being present. Eye contact produces equivalent amounts of energy. According to muscular energy studies, body language and eye contact are often disregarded, but knowing how they affect persuasion can help you master the skill. Your eyes do the talking for you. We can examine our faces, gestures, and postures to some extent, but we can't manipulate the blink rate or pupil dilation as much as we'd like, because our eyes' behavior in regards to body language is the most unconscious of all. Reading their movements will be reliable in establishing true meanings based on nonverbal communication. When we are confronted with a stimuli that is appealing to us, that we enjoy, research has revealed that our pupils dilate, but when we are confronted with something that causes rejection, dread, or disgust, our pupils contract. Large marketing and advertising firms have used this resource extensively in product testing. When we are frightened, frustrated, or dealing with anything, one of the most visible and typical things we do is block eye contact by covering or closing our eyes. Emotionally speaking, we cease seeing and assume that we may stop being seen by others when we are ashamed or guilty. It is a means of disappearing and protecting ourselves. Joe Navarro, an expert, says, our blink rate increases when we are frightened or in difficulty. According to research, a tendency that is common among liars but also among people who are under a lot of stress. I wouldn't brand someone a liar just because his blink rate is growing. But while researching Richard Nixon, I observed that his blink rate varied from 12 to 68 times per minute when he was fighting with the press. Bill Clinton had a high blink rate during his deposition, sometimes exceeding 92 per minute. But these were folks who were under a lot of stress. Many myths exist when it comes to interpreting eye behavior. Some people wrongly believe that little or no eye contact, especially during questioning, is a classic sign of lying, whereas the sincere person must shut their eyes. This is absolutely incorrect and not supported by research, because they know we're seeking for evidence of deception. Liars make more eye contact, According to Alder and others, the most effective ways to conquer her in one look. In just 4.5 seconds, you'll be able to master it. All you need is one look. When flirting isn't a mystery, maintaining eye contact is crucial. Experts agree that eye contact is the most effective way to conquer. Despite the fact that body language also sends messages, they claim that the eyes are windows to the soul and that your look is more communicative than you might think. The eyes, which are the most responsive sense, get 80% of the information you receive. You immediately notice when someone is gazing at you, and your brain begins to make mental notes on that person based on how they are looking at you. When your brain detects that multiple people are staring at you at the same time, it stops recording information and discards it. If they are solely gazing at you, on the other hand, they will alert you, and you will feel compelled to look at them again. As a result, eye contact is essential for transmitting all types of emotions, especially attraction signals, making it the most valuable resource while flirting. And there are 5 foolproof methods for achieving it without looking crazy. For a total of 4.5 seconds, maintain eye contact. When you gaze at someone, your brain takes 3 seconds to scan their face. Thus, doing it for a second and a half lets them know they had your attention for longer than everyone else. But watch out, holding it for 10 seconds sends one of 2 messages. You want to have sex or you're about to get into an argument about anything. After all, one of the best foreplays for having wonderful sex is having nice looks. Long periods of sustained eye contact elicit powerful emotional responses. It also promotes blood circulation, excites the neurological system, and accelerates the pulse. Holding your gaze for a few seconds, as subtle as it may appear, is a definite sign of flirting. Look at it, then look away, then back at it. Flirting can be more challenging when you're among other people. The secret is to make eye contact with the person you're interested in while they're looking at you. Then look about at the other people before returning your gaze to them. This is the most effective method to tell her that he was the first one who drew your attention, and that even after you've looked at the others, he's still the one who piques your curiosity. You can also put it into practice if you're alone with her. Make it clear to her that you want to break eye contact by looking down and then looking up again. If, on the other hand, his attention rapidly moves to the side or up after initiating eye contact, and he does not return your stare, he is most likely uninterested. Follow this advice, and you'll have your response in 10 minutes 15 seconds. Either you've defeated it, or you should surely take another look at the others. Perhaps there's someone else you overlooked. The triangle is a spherical shape. When we make eye contact with other people, our gaze tends to rest on strategic spots on their faces. According to several eye movement studies, we normally form a triangle from one eye to the other while looking at a stranger or in professional contexts, ending in the region between the nose and the mouth. The triangle widens in more friendly conditions, and we stare down at the mouth. On the other side, when we meet someone we find beautiful, we drop our look to include our chest. Yeah, you know why males can't restrain themselves. It's a natural reaction, and as the flirtation becomes more intense, the faster, more passionate, and more persistent eye contact develops, followed by long time spent at the mouth. Blinking is a clear form of flirting, as the movies have taught us, but it works. The truth is that you blink more than usual when you're looking at someone you like. The brain has been shown to equate blinking with attraction. Thus, the more you blink, the more likely they are to like you. The best part is that it is reciprocal. The more you feel attracted to someone who blinks at you, the more attracted you will feel to that person. So take advantage of it. If he intuitively likes you, increase the frequency with which you blink, and he will synchronize with you, boosting the level of attraction between the two of you. Of course, don't be alarmed if he blinks a few times. It doesn't indicate he's uninterested. You blink less when you're entirely involved in a conversation, busy, or really entertained so you don't miss a second. But then what? If you use your common sense, examine his body language and the situation, you'll be able to tell whether he's flirting with you or not. Grasp her eye, the ever-popular, incomparable, and unmistakable wink or eye sting. Accompany her with a seductive smile. It's a great method to show her that you're interested in her. Try it with both eyes at the same time if you want to be more daring. What we mean is blink in almost slow motion before you start juggling. However, just because blinking takes milliseconds in slow motion doesn't mean you're closing your eyes. Freak, simply blink a little more slowly once more. Now, if you're ready to use your most powerful weapon, your eyes, go forth and conquer. Isn't everything true in war and love? Eye contact's little-known secrets. When it comes to communication, making eye contact is crucial. Not only do they help to modulate the discussion and transmit sentiments and ideas, but they also help to convey feelings and ideas. Cracking their codes can provide you with a wealth of knowledge about others. Eye contact is a significant form of communication. Looks send out conscious and unconscious cues that have a big impact on all kinds of interactions. They're a part of the communication that occurs between the lines that characterize so much mutual perception. The appearances are a world to interpret that should be considered. The amygdala, a region of the brain connected with emotions, is highly linked to eye contact and how it is interpreted. The wonderful thing about eye contact is that it is both a subtle and a forceful kind of communication. We aren't aware of how we appear, and we don't always consider the message we're sending and how it affects our interactions with others. Who does not assume a look will not assume a long explanation. This article's goal is to illustrate some fascinating aspects of the amazing world of the gaze. Arabic adage: a crucial factor is the duration of eye contact. One of the most important aspects of communicating through the gaze is maintaining eye contact. A person who avoids another's gaze, for example, is distressed emotionally. A complete lack of eye contact shows that you have no control over your emotions. Others experience a sense of unease and mistrust as a result. At the other end of the spectrum is the person who maintains a fixed stare and does not shift it. This form of eye contact indicates a desire to dominate and control the other person. This type of gaze can be quite terrifying after a few minutes. It implies a willingness to use the other for one's own ends. Reading with your eyes, even if they aren't very powerful. All eyes transmit some level of eagerness. The aridity of the encounter or the apathy felt is reflected in the latter. It is, however, difficult to see at a glance. It's possible that the other person is upset. Now, when we do, we find vestiges of her emotional world in her. Several of the encrypted codes in eye contact have been deciphered by body language experts. Some of the most prevalent explanations are as follows. If you're blinking a lot and it's noticeable, you're definitely insecure and nervous. People are skeptical of leaders who blink frequently. They are looking to the left to recall information and to the right to produce ideas or thoughts. If your eyes is drawn to that individual all the time, it's possible that they're lying. This is reversed in the case of left-handed people. When someone looks them in the eyes, they don't believe what they're hearing. When one person is concerned about maintaining good communication with the other, the eyebrows are usually elevated during the dialogue. Seduction and instinctive looks are also important during seduction. They are frequently the start of what will eventually become a kind friendship. Even if the contact is made over the phone, the people's eyes reveal a romantic attraction. For instance, they usually sparkle brighter, have dilated pupils, and reflect more sweetness. Eye contact is used to measure interest in another person. According to body language experts, if someone looks you in the eyes, drops their gaze, and then returns their attention, they are most likely interested in you. If someone stares at you, then breaks eye contact and turns to the side, they are unsure whether or not they are being brought to you. If she initiates eye contact with you but then looks away, she is unlikely to be attracted to you. You are interested in the person in front of you if you blink more than 10 times each minute. Humans' gaze has an effect on animals as well. They interpret the look as a defiant posture if they are angry. One technique to lessen the likelihood of an attack is to look aside. Finally, the world of appearances is a universe of limitless possibilities, a mode of communication that reveals a great deal about ourselves and others. As a result, it is important to consider when speaking with others. The eye's influence. The gaze is said to be a portal to the soul. We may learn a lot about the person who is staring at us through it. There are many different types of looks, and they alter based on the situation and the person's mental condition. Looking with rage is not the same as looking with love, passion, or indifference. As a result, a glance can transmit a lot of information, especially if the look is genuine. This is due to the fact that, depending on the sort of appearance, it is usually quite expressive. Eye contact is one of the seduction weapons we employ to send information to the other person and awaken something in them. We will be able to properly seduce someone, or at the least, awaken their interest in us, if we learn to use the look well and pair it with other characteristics or acts that we shall see in this post. Flirting with your eyes is difficult, and we must consider various factors. First and foremost, let me state unequivocally that this post is not intended to be a guide to flirting. We'll discuss the power of the glance when it comes to seducing, as well as certain components of it that you may improve to have a stronger impact on the other person. While we will frequently refer to the behavior of flirting throughout the essay, when we talk about seduction, we also mean arousing another person's interest in a way that isn't sexual or romantic. You were flirting with your eyes. What was the best way to do it? But how can you get in touch with the look? And, most importantly, how do you do it successfully? We'll look at few factors that can assist us in accomplishing this. A positive attitude. When engaging with the gaze, the first thing to remember is that the glance we project or direct to the other must be accompanied by an attitude. This attitude must match the message we're trying to send with our eyes. Looking without desire or passion, for example, is not the same as simply looking. As a result, our posture has a lot to do with the intent of our gaze as well as the emotion we wish to transmit and awaken in the other. We must question oneself, precisely, what we want to arouse in the other. Do we want to pique people's interest, desire, curiosity, and then we'll shift our gaze based on that. We can do this by practicing in front of the mirror, a period of time. The premise, on the other hand, is that the gaze we offer to another person only lasts a few seconds, even thousands of seconds. Long stares are ineffective because they can have the reverse impact, causing the other person to feel overwhelmed or scared. Intensity is a term used to describe how intense something is. Another thing to think about when it comes to the gaze is its intensity and how we modulate it. This is a difficult feature to quantify since how do we evaluate the intensity of a gaze? In some ways, this is a question of common sense. We can look very passionately, fixedly, without blinking, with a facial expression or look without more ado while passing and without being overly entertained. As a result, The intensity of flirting with the gaze is influenced by a variety of factors, including the duration of the look and the overall facial expression. Ideally, we'll be able to locate a middle ground in this intensity. We can do so by practicing in front of a mirror. For example, body language is an important factor to consider. The gaze is one of the body language factors in nonverbal communication, but it is much more. To properly link with the gaze, we must also pay attention to other components of our body that accompany that glance and ensure that they are consistent with it. That is, there is a certain harmony between our gaze and the rest of our body. We must consider that our facial expression and face are greatly defined by our appearance, since it is one of its most important features. As a result, we must consider, laugh out loud. Do we want a grin to go along with our gaze? If so, which one? Perhaps a mischievous grin. When it comes to flirting, everything matters. Taking a posture. What kind of body language will go with that look? It should ideally be a natural posture that is never forced. Hand gestures. What gestures shall we make to go along with our smile? We must also keep this in mind and regulate it so that our gaze and expression are in sync. Remember that if the various aspects of verbal language agree, our message will be more effective and credible. Hands. The location of the hands is also essential, though not necessarily to the exclusion of other factors. It all relies on how we're flirting with the other person in the first place. Thus, standing versus sitting, being distant versus being close, being in a cinema versus being in a museum, and so on. Set a goal for yourself. However, as previously stated, none of these are beneficial while flirting with your gaze if you haven't first determined your objective. This includes making time to look at that special someone. So first and foremost, you must master the crossing of eyes. What is the best way to understand the other's reaction? Okay. We've practiced our finest stare at the individual that keeps us awake at night, but what happened next? What exactly has she done? Various scenarios may arise. We demonstrate how to interpret a few of them. She maintains his eyes. Perhaps the other individual has kept his sight on ours while we are looking at her. What does this imply? One option is that we have piqued her attention, or at the very least piqued her curiosity. Withdraws is a term used to describe a person who withdraws. It may also happen the other way around, and it appeared to be withdrawing. When eye contact is made correctly, it might be interpreted as a gesture of humiliation or intimidation. If you do it later, it could suggest the same thing, or it could just signal that we have irritated you or that you are uninterested in us, although it is too early to judge. It will also depend on whether we were doing it for the first time or not. Withdraw your gaze and refocus it. If the other person shifts their glance away from us and then back to us, this could be a sign of interest, a smile, and a game of looks. When it comes to flirting with the eyes, if the other person responds by playing with their eyes and accompanying everything with a smile, it appears to be a good indication that they like you simply because he is interested in meeting you. Avoid looking at the person and don't look at them again. If the other person not only withdraws his glance once we make eye contact, but also avoids your sight and never looks at you again, he is most likely uninterested in you. Logic dictates that this and prior suggestions be evaluated in their whole, taking into account all components of the encounter, and that they should only be used as a guide for evaluating the game of gazes and the other person's reaction. How to use your eyes to seduce someone. The eyes can be a potent seduction technique. There are several techniques to train your eyes to attract attention and pique someone's interest in you. Make direct eye contact and use your gaze to its full potential. Taking the initiative to initiate initial eye contact is a good idea. This exudes confidence, which many people admire. People are naturally drawn to those who are interested in them. If you try to match a person's look from across the room, you'll intrigue them. Rather than waiting for her to notice you, try to make eye contact first. Keep your eyes peeled for signals that someone is interested in you. Use this as an opportunity to initiate eye contact for the first time. The indications can be subtle, such as when someone looks at you. Women can occasionally show their attraction by running their fingers through their hair. Begin with a few quick glances. If you're a shy person, start with a few of looks. Looking at someone twice indicates that you are interested in them. Try a couple quick looks at someone, then look away and back at them. This can indicate to a possible companion that you are interested in them and would like their attention. Look at someone from the side. Seeing someone out of the corner of your eye, in addition to creating direct eye contact, might be beneficial. If you haven't got an opportunity to strike up a conversation with someone, only look at them for a few minutes. Spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes looking at someone you find beautiful from the side. Make it obvious and cool. Check to see if that person is also paying attention to you. It can help you gaze out of the corner of your eye at someone while laughing at something your friend says. Laughter is contagious and might make the person you're trying to charm more attractive. Intimate relationships. Chapter 8. Culture, attraction, and love. Personal attraction and love are two phenomena connected with close partnerships. One of the factors that can lead to the formation of a loving relationship is attraction. Some scholars believe that attachment is the fundamental phenomena that underpins the attraction and love processes. Affiliation is a natural human propensity that leads to a desire to be in the company of others, with the primary goal of ensuring the individual's and species' survival. In this way, it is thought that one of the affiliation's goals is to form relationships, express love, and sexuality. Attraction, interpersonal attraction, according to Barron and Bion, is defined as a person's evaluation of another along an attitudinal axis whose extremes are positive evaluation, love, and negative evaluation. Hatred, hate. This judgment is linked to behaviors, e.g., seeking to do things with the person who attracts us, feelings, e.g., feeling sad when we can't be with that person, and other cognitions, e.g., attributing many favorable attributes to that person. Moya presents the most popular psychosocial hypotheses for attraction in recent years. The quest for mental consistency. People endeavor to preserve consistency between our attitudes and our behaviors, according to theories like Festinger's cognitive dissonance. As a result of this perspective, we will try to share our partner's thoughts and hobbies, and in unstable conditions, we may modify our ideology or divorce. Association and reinforcement's ramifications. Following classical conditioning principles, the impacts of association on interpersonal attraction consist of being drawn to persons who appear to be related with positive experiences for us. Those associated with negative events will irritate us. In this sense, the mum effect refers to people's aversion to sharing bad news with others, even if we have no connection to them. When we send it, we will appear to be involved with the negative event in the receiver's view. As a result, we will be unattractive to them. Interdependence and exchange. According to the idea of social exchange, a person will be attractive if the benefits received from such a relationship outweigh the expenses involved. According to authors such as Blau and Kelly and Thibaut, the attractiveness of a person in a relationship is determined by comparisons made using two criteria: of the comparison level based on previous experiences. Any current circumstance will only be viewed as favorable based on the amount of comparison with alternatives, and b this comparison, which can form prior love relationships. If it is the only option we have, a fairly nice relationship can be the best evaluated. A number of factors, in addition to these psychological theories, play a critical role in the emergence and persistence of the attraction we develop for certain persons. Then we'll go over the most important ones. Proximity. Proximity not only helps people get to know one another, but it also has an impact on dating and marriage. According to Festinger, Schachter, and Back's research, the three people with whom college students in a dorm had the best relationships were those who lived closest to each other. Similarly, authors like Bion and Buehler have demonstrated that the relationships formed by students during the semester are a function of the distance between the seats, implying that physical proximity affects the students' ability to get to know one another. The links between physical distance and attraction, however, do not guarantee that proximity causes relationships. It is possible that people who share certain features, e.g., religion, economic standing, etc., choose to live close to each other. There are various theories about how physical proximity affects the formation of relationships. The folks who are physically closest to you are also the most accessible. Feelings of concern about the unfamiliar fade with repeated exposure, and the new person progressively becomes more familiar. Proximity can improve familiarity, and familiarity can boost attraction. Simply put, the effect of simple exposure is that repeated perception of an originally neutral or positive stimulus leads to a stronger attraction to the stimulus. People that share particular places tend to resemble one another in other aspects, such as ideology, goals, issues, and so forth. We will tend to get along well because we are similar, or because we have been doing similar things as a result of being together. Finally, according to cognitive consistency theories, when we have to spend a lot of time with someone and the connection is unpleasant, we prefer to restore equilibrium by either wanting to move away from them or realizing that they are not as bad as we thought. Proximity has a beneficial effect on attraction if the individual is initially positive or neutral, rather than negative. Experiments on negative and positive effect reveal that happy sentiments lead to favorable appraisals of others, likes and dislikes, but negative feelings lead to negative judgments, dislike, and antipathy. Affection has two effects on attraction. First, someone else can make you feel good or awful. People who make you feel good are likely to be liked, while people who make you feel horrible are likely to be despised. Second, imagine that a person is only present when your positive and negative feelings are triggered, for whatever cause. This person will be polite or rude to you in that scenario. Classic conditioning underpins the overall concept. When a stimulus that creates negative or positive feelings is connected with an attitudinal object, the observer develops negative or positive attitudes toward the item. Positive effect leads to like others, while negative effect leads to dislike. According to numerous studies, negative reactions, like positive reactions, can be passed along from person to person. If bad emotions make other individuals unpleasant to us, and affection is easily connected with anyone, we are more likely to transmit our unfavorable feelings from one person to another when we see them together. Negatively perceived qualities, e.g., race, age, foreign accent, physical impairment, etc., are associated with stigmata just as easily as positive ones, according to research. Even if a stigma is overcome, the influence of the preceding stigma does not always go away. Characteristics of people: sincerity, honesty, understanding, loyalty, and trustworthiness were judged to be the 5 most valued attributes by Anderson. Understanding, loyalty, ability to capture others' feelings, genuineness, and joy were among the most highly rated personality traits in Moya's study. Affection, e.g., affectionate, friendly, happy, and considerate, nonverbal cues, e.g., smiling, looking attentively, expressing emotions, and attitudinal dispositions, e.g., showing a liking for people are among the most valued traits in people, according to other studies, and competence, which includes social skills and intelligence, e.g., having an interesting conversation, etc. Another set of characteristics relating to the person we deal with's power, prestige, or social position is extremely important in determining whether or not they are attractive, particularly for guys. In fact, women market physical attractiveness while seeking financial security, whereas males display financial positions while requesting specific physical traits. Likeness. Psychosocial research shows that, in general, as people's resemblance increases, so does their attraction. Attitudinal and personality similarity are the 2 elements of similarity that social psychologists have researched the most. Attitude similarity refers to how 2 people have similar views on a variety of topics. According to Bion, the more the similarity, the stronger the attraction. This outcome has been observed in persons of all ages, from all groups, and from many countries. The percentage hypothesis anticipated that attraction varies depending on the proportion of comparable attitudes shared, which was supported by Smeaton, Bion, and Mernan's study. Despite these findings, other studies shown that dissimilar attitudes have a little bigger impact than similar attitudes, in part because most individuals assume that a stranger, especially one who is beautiful, has similar attitudes to them. The false consensus effect is a result of this expectation of broad agreement with one's own beliefs. As a result, agreement is expected while disagreement is unexpected. Assume that on some specific issues, people believe they are in the minority, and that the majority of people disagree with them. In this instance, the conflict will be foreseen and will have less of an impact than if it occurs unexpectedly. Reciprocity. Once 2 people have found enough common ground to form a friendship, they must take another step: the presence or absence of reciprocity in the relationship. That is, whether or not we are attracted to these people, is one of the variables determining the formation of productive partnerships. Receiving favorable feedback makes almost everyone happy, and receiving bad criticism is generally uncomfortable. Individuals with negative self-concepts, on the other hand, may respond favorably to true negative judgments, probably because these evaluations match their self-schema. Although mutual liking is frequently communicated in words, nonverbal markers of attraction can be the earliest symptoms of attraction. Even when he understood that a woman's opinions were different, Gold, Rickman, and Mosley discovered that when a woman responded positively to a guy by looking at him, chatting to him, and approaching closer, he tended to be drawn to her. Someone who has a negative perception of us is unrewarding. Someone likes me, according to cognitive consistency theories, and that someone I like is an unstable scenario. Aronson and co-discovered that when 2 people despise the same thing, their attraction to each other is stronger than when they don't. Attraction to the body. According to Hatfield and Sprecher, given the same traits, a person with a pleasant physical appearance is more attractive than someone with a less attractive physical appearance. When it comes to initial impressions or superficial touch, physical appeal is very important. The individual we initially conclude has no interest, is not paid attention to, and is forgotten, according to the cognitive ignorance process. According to studies, males frequently overlook unattractive women. Men and women of various ethnicities have agreed in several studies that an attractive female face has both a childish aspect, big, wide-set eyes, a tiny nose, a broad smile, and a small chin and mature features, prominent cheekbones, cheeks thin, high eyebrows, and large pupils. Men's physical attractiveness has been rated positively, but women's physical attractiveness has been rated negatively. Body build, or the waist-hip ratio in women's cases, is another physical trait that appears to influence physical beauty. When a really gorgeous face was paired with an unappealing body, Alec discovered that attractiveness reduced dramatically. Overweight persons are also thought to be less attractive. The following reasons demonstrate why we find a pleasing physique appealing. There are numerous ideas regarding how people's attributes are related with each other in our culture, according to implicit theories of personality. In this sense, the halo effect assumes that someone who possesses one good characteristic would also possess other desirable qualities. People perceive that attractive men and women are more stable, intriguing, sociable, independent, dominant, exciting, sensual, balanced, socially proficient, and successful than those who are not attractive. According to some research, physical attractiveness, on the other hand, can be linked to undesirable traits. Very gorgeous women, for example, may be perceived as more materialistic and vain than less attractive ones. When they are tried for a crime including deception, they may be judged more guilty than the latter. Attractive people also draw us since interacting with someone with these attributes improves our public image. As a result, different studies have proved that when a man appears with a really lovely woman, he makes a better impression. Attractive people can act in ways that improve their rating and make them more appealing. Rise discovered that handsome men had more female connections and gained more social skills than less attractive guys. The most attractive women, on the other hand, did not engage in more interactions with males, and were less forceful and afraid in their male relationships than the less attractive women. Good-looking people, according to the effect-centered model, activate positive effects. And effect, as previously indicated, is an essential factor of attraction. People make errors in evaluating how appealing they are to others. But not women exaggerate their attractiveness. It's hardly surprising that many people are concerned about their appearance because many biases favor attractiveness. Appearance anxiety is characterized by a preoccupation with one's looks and a dread of negative feedback from others. It's not just about a person's physical appearance when deciding whether or not they're attractive. The influence of situational circumstances on the observer is also significant. When a person has previously seen multiple highly attractive individuals, Kenrick discovered that the person in issue is assessed as less appealing. Perceptions are also influenced by behavioral factors. People, regardless of gender or age, respond more warmly to someone who walks with a young gait than someone who walks with an aged gait. Adults who appear to be very young are frequently seen as weak, ignorant, and inept, but also as kind and honest. People who look to be very mature are thought to be more dominant and attractive, but less affectionate and pleasant. Attraction as well as culture, attractiveness, perception, and social behavior. Contrary to popular belief that beauty varies depending on who is looking and that there are radically different patterns of beauty. 15 studies have found that people from various nations and ethnic groups agree on which types of people are physically attractive and which are not. People from 13 different cultures. 4 ethnic groups rated a female face as more attractive if it had the following features: large eyes with dilated pupils, tiny nose, high cheekbones, narrow face with thin cheeks, wide smile, thick or full lips, and a small chin. Other findings, however, reveal cultural differences. Blacks in the United States rate overweight women as more beautiful than whites. This implies that, while there is agreement on body form and attractive facial features, ethnic differences in the body weight and size factors that characterize attractiveness exist. People view and judge attractive people more favorably. According to studies, this is known as the "what is beautiful is good" effect. More attractive children were rated as being friendlier, more competent, having a better fit and emotional balance, and having stronger interpersonal skills than less handsome youngsters. According to Langlois Review, attractive adults were assessed to be more competent at work, more pleasant, and better fit in terms of mental health. Attractive children and adults were consistently treated more warmly. With the more attractive youngsters, there were less unpleasant interactions, more good interactions, and more caring. While attractive adults received more attention, were given more rewards, had more positive interactions with them, fewer negative interactions, and received more help and cooperation. Less attractive adults received less attention, were given more rewards, and had more positive interactions with them. It's also been proven that attractive people behave more positively, e.g., they're more popular, slightly smarter, have better social skills and behaviors, and have better physical health and have more positive qualities, e.g., higher self-esteem, better mental health, more extroversion. Finally, attractive people have a somewhat higher self-perception or judgment of themselves than less attractive people. They believe they are more competent and have better mental health. Factors of socio-cultural and attractiveness. Pragma is a term that refers to pragmatic love, or love that is founded on a reasoned quest for the perfect spouse. Age, education, social standing, religion, or the ability to be a decent father or mother are all factors considered by the pragmatic lover. Unlike storage, where love might flourish without regard for the partner's future plans or family background, the pragmatic lover is more inclined to set criteria before starting a relationship. Agape, or altruistic love, is a state of complete renunciation and selflessness. It's a romantic relationship in which sexuality and sensuality aren't important. The Hendrick and Hendrick scale of love attitudes is the one that assesses this typology from the perspective of an individual's approach to love relationships. Hendrick and Hendrick use this measure to categorize romantic stories told by university students into 6 different styles: Eros, 34%, Storage, 66%, Lusus, 2%, Mania, 2%, Pragma, 17%, and Agape, 2%. Moreover, 3/4 of the stories were about romantic love, with 1/3 of them being about passionate love. In terms of gender differences, Hendrick and Hendrick discovered that males value passionate love, Eros and amusing or entertaining activities more than women. Ludus, women are more prone to friendly love, storage, logical love, pragma, and possessive love. Pragma than men, mania. These findings were discussed in terms of the roles that these forms of love have had in the evolution of the species for each sex. Love's functions in evolution. We can argue about the biological utility of loving behavior for the individual as a member of a species using evolutionary reasons. This viewpoint considers love to be a natural aspect of the human state, as well as a natural feature of other species. Love is biologically meaningful if it aids in the survival of species, which is a major theme in evolutionary theory. The survival of species depended on reproductive success 5 million years ago. Higher primates' biochemistry led them to seek and obtain pleasure not only from sexual activity but also from female-male bonding and parent descendants. Sexual desire and commitment were reinforced in higher primates whose biochemistry led them to seek and obtain pleasure not only from sexual activity but also from female-male bonding and parent descendants. Ancestors who were motivated to sexual activity and had stable emotional relationships were more likely to pass on their genes than those who are not. Humans are genetically pre-programmed to engage in sexual activity. Sexual desire or sexual love in the language of Oatley and Johnson Layer, 1995. To fall in love, stable emotional bonds with a partner, and to care for descendants as a result of this evolutionary process. Parental love. The evolutionary viewpoint acknowledges that present environmental conditions have an impact. Sexual activity is determined by social and non-genetic factors in the body. The historical influence, or the 10,000 years of civilization in which we now live, has only acted throughout 5% of the species' lifetime, or over 400 of humanity's 100,000 generations. This socio-biological theory explains sex variations in sexual behavior and love through two basic processes involving differential parental investment and sexual selection. The sexual selection process is divided into two parts. A intrasexual selection refers to the competitive pressure that members of one sex put on members of the other. The strongest and best hunting individuals are more likely to dominate the competition and live in a species where men fight for females based on their hunting prowess and strength. And B. Epigamic selection is the other part of sexual selection. If one sex chooses its other sex partners primarily on physical strength and aggressiveness, these characteristics must be more distinctive to one sex than the other. Parental investment is described as a parent's commitment of time, energy, and risk in their offspring in order to maximize the latter's chances of survival, and thus reproductive success at the expense of the father's potential to invest in another offspring. While normal parental investment has been widely diverse throughout our evolutionary history, the minimum possible parental investment of females has been substantially greater than that of males in our species due to 9 months of gestation and subsequent months of nursing. In basic hunter-gatherer societies, a woman can have a maximum of 25 children, while the average number of offspring is 5. If the danger of copulation was low, ancestral men may have profited reproductively by copulating with any fertile female. As a result, it's reasonable to assume that natural selection rewarded males with low sexual arousal thresholds and who were quick to respond to new sexually appealing females. Our female predecessors, on the other hand, had little to gain reproductively and a lot to lose if they copulated with new men at random. Females who were sexually attracted to a wide variety of males or who were present only because of their presence are unlikely to have benefited from selection. In the case of the human species, socio-biological theory predicts that because women must be reproductive, they will be better sexual objects if they have a youthful and maternal appearance. For example, the narrower the waist is in comparison to the hips, the more attractive, healthy, and reproductively desirable they are to men. Women are also expected to be more picky in choosing their partners because they have a greater parental commitment in their children than men and can only father a few boys in a short period of time. As a result, women seek out males who will safeguard them and their children with their money. They will give more attention to the traits of prestige, dominance, and aggressiveness while picking potential sexual partners. They'll choose those who have a better ability to get resources. Role theories that highlight that women are allocated and socialized in passive, lower status, and community roles while males are not are popular with predictions from socio-biological theory addressing gender differences in behavior. They are passive, higher status, and agentic positions. As a result, women should approve of casual relationships less and have fewer diverse partners. Sociobiologists suggest that, while males are more permissive of extramarital romances than women, men are particularly opposed to women having such relationships because they must ensure paternity with absolute certainty. According to this perspective, men will cherish playful love more than women, owing to their smaller parental investment and favorable attitude toward casual sex and gaining the greatest number of prospective mates. Given the increased parental investment and effort required to raise a few descendants, women will place a higher importance on pragmatic and friendly love, as well as social power and status characteristics when choosing a mate. As a result, the species' reproduction would be aided by men's playful love and women's pragmatic love. Cross-cultural research has consistently verified socio-biological notions that women prefer older sexual partners and evaluate them based on their resources, According to these predictions, men want mates who are younger and more physically beautiful. In this regard, cross-cultural research in 37 different nations confirmed that women tend to evaluate their male mates based on their economic capacity, ambition, and perseverance, whereas men favor health, beauty, and youth when choosing a female spouse. They'll pick those who show the most evidence of being able to reproduce. Men had more permissive views towards sexual interactions, earlier commencement of coital sexual encounters, a higher frequency of intercourse, and a greater number of sexual partners than women, according to Oliver and Hyde's meta-analysis. Anthropological research backs up this larger masculine centrality in sexuality. Only 4 of the 849 civilizations investigated in Murdoch's ethnographic atlas are polyandrous, one husband for multiple women. A woman can have 2 or more husbands. In addition to the 4 polyandrous, they are all polygamous, despite the fact that the opposite is not true. Gender inequalities will be reinforced as a result of the socio-biological augmentation, especially in cultures with fewer social restraints. These allow for the exploration of the whole behavioral repertoire as well as a stronger manifestation of intrinsic distinctions. Some authors have proposed the transcultural existence of romantic or passionate love based on the universal quality of love and cultural influence. In a study of 186 civilizations, Jankowiak and Fisher discovered that 88.5% of them exhibit indications of intense love. Other authors, including social constructionists and relativists like Averill, argue that passionate love is a phenomenon created by social discourse at a specific historical and cultural moment. According to Hendrick and Hendrick, among others, it is unique to Western culture and dates back to the 12th century. Some scholars, like Brashade, argue that representations of desire and intense love may be found in far older books such as the Bible, Hindu scriptures, and classical Chinese classics. Love is increasingly being viewed as a universal phenomena by psychologists, anthropologists, and other academics. However, its precise meaning varies significantly from one culture to the next and across time. It was not a need for marriage before the modern era. Thus, in many communities, it was arranged by parents or relatives in the hopes that the pair would fall in love later. Even yet, there were no high hopes for romantic love. The relationship between marriage and love has altered during the last 30 years. According to studies undertaken in Western societies, women, in particular, wanted to marry even if they were not in love romantically. Even yet, men and women have agreed on the idea of romantic love as the foundation of marriage since then. Romantic love appears to have become the primary reason for long-term married relationships in Western nations over the 20th century. When a large portion of a society shares the notion that marriage should be solely for love, it becomes an ideology. Because so many people today believe this, it's impossible to imagine how pleasant marriages could have been in prior centuries. Perhaps people in past eras had a different ideology. Perhaps there was an early desire to share life with a spouse, to have sexual fulfillment, or to grow to love the other more profoundly over time. Except for falling in love, several of these anticipations sound a lot like today's anticipations. It's likely that the love-marriage relationship hasn't altered all that much. What has changed is the love ideology, which has shifted from marriages must be arranged to marriages must be built on love. This is dependent on how love is defined to some extent, intimate relationships and socio-structural factors. In the realm of beliefs and loving behaviors, some authors have emphasized the importance of social structure variables. The demographic ratio between men and women, according to Guttentag and Secord, is a significant component in explaining the prevalent type of love. When there are more men in the population than women, the few women are treasured. A non-passionate romantic picture of love, as well as an idealized vision of women and the family, prevail. In this situation, a more partner-oriented kind of love would most likely prevail. The family and marriage will be devalued if there are too many women. Extramarital sex, singleness, and separations would be common. Committed love would be less prevalent, and a playful and sexual love style would reign supreme. These researchers looked at population data from many countries and historical periods, including ancient Greece, medieval Europe, and the United States, to see if these hypotheses were validated over time. Eagley and Wood, on the other hand, argued that in societies with greater gender equality, sex differences and criteria for choosing an intimate partner should be smoothed out, because men's preferences for younger women capable of being good attractive housewives, as well as women's importance placed on men's social resources, reflect differences in status and roles between men and women. Re-examining the partner selection criteria, it was discovered that the greater the gender equality, as measured by an indicator of women's labor and institutional insertion, as well as salary parity with men, the fewer differences there were between the sexes in the importance given to financial resources and being a good householder as criteria for choosing a partner. Differences in attitudes about love between nations and genders, according to this socio-structural perspective, are influenced by societal resources, demographics, and the allocation of power and status among gender roles. The relevance of passionate love as a criterion and prerequisite for choosing an intimate partner and marrying will be directly reinforced by socioeconomic progress. It enables a person to place a higher priority on subjective rather than practical factors. Men's and women's responses to love will become increasingly comparable when social and economic progress occurs, which is related with a lesser disparity in status and power over gender roles. Economic development, according to Levine, would reinforce individualism, relative equality of opportunity between men and women, higher education, greater female labor participation, and legal equality, and would increase the importance of subjective feelings and personal decisions in the formation of couples, which would be associated with an increase in divorces and a decrease in birth rates, greater control of contraception by the woman and greater planning as a result. Inequalities between men and women, as well as between nations, could be explained by differences in resource allocation and responsibilities. Intimate relationships and cultural factors. Cultural values have been proven to have an impact on love beliefs in other studies. According to Dion and Dion, different cultural orientations have a significant impact on how people think about love and intimacy. The intense romantic component of love is valued higher in more individualistic societies, where intimate connections are formed face-to-face and more or less symmetrically in collectivist societies. On the other hand, intimate relationships are organized through the participation of the extended family, and the pragmatic and amicable components of love are prized more. In individualistic cultures, romantic love is thus a more important foundation for marriage than in collectivist cultures. In the first, two people's love and individual decisions appear to be natural for them to build a solid couple. In the latter, the creation of the couple is, in general, a decision made by the elderly. It is based on agreements that are tailored to the wishes of the families, and it is a personal responsibility. The majority of humanity lives in collectivist cultures, and marriages are largely influenced by the family. The majority of brides are teenagers. In 2/3 of nations, they are paid a dowry, and marriage is viewed as a social contract between families. Only 1/3 of Chinese marriages were free of family influence in 1980. In 1989, 40% of marriages in Korea were arranged, as were 72% of Turkish women interviewed in the 1970s. In this socio-cultural and normative perspective, more than the inequalities in resources and roles, parental arranged marriage was particularly frequent among Indian and Pakistani immigrants. They'd explain the distinctions between men and women, as well as different countries. Even if economic development is controlled, cultures whose beliefs emphasize autonomy and individual decisions, as well as internal traits and sentiments. Individualistic would emphasize the importance of passionate love. Love is a criterion and prerequisite for a partner's choice. And then there's marriage. Collectivist cultures, which value practical and friendly features of relationships over love as a criterion, and necessary for creating a stable marriage, will value practical and friendly aspects of relationships more than love as a criterion and prerequisite for developing a stable couple. Love. It's also reasonable to suppose that normative cultures, which place a premium on following rules, will reject more fun and pragmatic love in favor of characteristics like innocence and social position. The style of love mania, high emotional and possessive activation, should be emphasized in these societies that do not accept uncertainties or feelings. Hierarchical cultures, which emphasize the legitimacy of status asymmetry and obedience, from children to fathers and wives to husbands, among others, and masculine, competitive cultures, which emphasize gender differences, will reinforce gender differences in response, in particular by reinforcing people's support for traditional gender criteria, e.g., women will value social status more and men will value chastity and feminine characteristics. Remember that, according to a sociocultural argument, cultures with more limits diminish gender differences in normative responses. For example, if pragmatic love is normative in collectivist cultures, there will be fewer differences between men and women in the valuing of pragmatic love. In conclusion, love is a cultural and historical phenomena with inter- and intra-individual variety, socio-cultural factors and different kinds of love. A research of the value of Hendrick and Hendrick's diverse forms of love to people from 15 nations and regions around the world has verified the impact of economic, social, and cultural factors on the valuation of these varieties of love. Given that the lower the score, the greater the type of love, and that a score of 3 or more indicates disapproval, the sensual style is the most valued, followed by the storage mania style. According to the national averages, the least regarded styles are ludus and pragma. Furthermore, cultures that emphasize the friendly and partner style, storage favor practicalities, pragma over possession, envy, and high emotional arousal levels, mania. Cultures that respect passionate love also value manic lovelessness in this way. Erotic love is highly appreciated in feminine cultures, in non-competitive societies that emphasize quality of life, in countries with strong social development, and in cultures that have a low fear of uncertainty and are less normative and nervous. In collectivist societies, where intimate relationships are built primarily on familial obligations and duties. In cultures with low avoidance of love, the storage and pragma love styles, which do not have such intense connotations, are highly prized. Uncertainty. Intolerant societies that respect gradual and peaceful love and are less emotional. The social and practical components of love are valued higher in countries with lower socioeconomic development and greater hierarchical distance. As a result, these findings confirm what has been observed in earlier studies, namely, that African countries have a larger frequency of the pragmatic and relationship love style. Storage. Eastern and less developed countries are more collectivist. The manic style associated with possession and high affective activation is more severe in individualistic societies that value the person more and have a high avoidance of uncertainty that is more normative and emotive. Finally, in collectivist cultures with limited socioeconomic development and low uncertainty avoidance, the playful love style is more prized. Extramarital sexuality is more common in these cultures, particularly in African countries, because there are fewer resourceful male partners and a greater tolerance and acceptance of casual sex. Gender differences and the different types of love. In terms of gender differences, the findings suggest that women agree with pragmatic love and storage love substantially more than men. At the same time, they place a lower value on ludus and agape love. There are larger variations between women and men in their valuations of playful love styles and feminine versus masculine societies. As a result, males place a higher value on fun love than women, and men from feminine cultures place a higher value on playful love than women. It has also been discovered that women and men value storing love differently in collectivist countries with lower levels of social development. Although women agree with the form of friendly love in all countries more than men, women from collectivist and less developed nations stress this sort of love more than men, presumably to compensate for a lack of resources and autonomy. The findings also demonstrate that in individualistic countries, men and women have a wider disparity in their pragma style valuation. In individualistic nations, women agree with the practical side of love more than men, whereas both men and women appreciate it more in collectivist countries. Similarly, in male cultures, the discrepancies in men and women's perceptions of the pragma style were bigger than in feminine ones. In individualistic and competitive cultures, women stress pragmatic love more than men, most likely as a strategy of adapting to their surroundings. In individualistic cultures, emphasizing personal feelings and decisions when establishing intimate relationships, and in cultures characterized by more egalitarian or less social relationships, hierarchical and greater social development, love and physical attractiveness are more valued as criteria for choosing a partner. In contrast, in civilizations with fewer resources, less social development, and a strong hierarchical structure, the value of innocence, social status, and good health is more essential, because the components of survival and social adaptation of intimate relationships are more relevant in these circumstances. The higher valuation of the more tangible and realistic parts of love appears to be consistent with the socio-cultural context. Even if they were not in love, half of people from collectivist societies believe they would be willing to marry someone. According to studies, the majority of people, 66%, refuse to marry someone who meets all of the conditions but is not in love with them, and just a minority, 13%, accept it. See Table 3. Individuals from individualistic and macho countries, in particular, express less agreement with marrying someone who possesses all of the attributes but with whom they are not in love. Furthermore, countries with higher levels of social development and lower levels of hierarchy place a higher value on love as a prerequisite for forming personal and marital relationships. As a result, these findings support previous research that shows that love is more essential in westernized, more developed, and individualistic countries, such as the United States, followed by Brazil, England, and Australia, and less important in developing countries. Eastern countries such as India, Pakistan, Thailand, and the Philippines are more hierarchical and collectivist. Japan and Hong Kong, the two Asian countries with the least collectivism and the most developed economies, placed a higher value on love. According to these findings, satisfying basic needs allows for the development of more self-fulfillment and self-expression, such as romantic love. Individualism and egalitarian cultural interactions place a greater emphasis on internal characteristics and personal marital decisions. It might surprise you. The truth about women's love and sex. Women are far too complex. Women have a lot of requirements. I have no idea what women are thinking. This is something you hear all the time. And, to be honest, that makes perfect sense. Others argue that it's easier to raise your hands and refer to women as black boxes that can't be understood rather than trying to wrap their heads around women who can. Here's what you need to know about women, and the good news is that they're creatures at first, and highly sexual on a biological level. Indeed, they are likely to value sex much more than we do. Have you ever noticed how much more women groan during sex than men? What every woman is afraid to live. And the trick to alleviate this anxiety and get them to do anything you ask. Regrettably, society teaches women that it is bad to enjoy sex in the relevant part of their minds, not the emotional part. Labels like slut or prostitute have a severe negative impact on women since they manage to be social creatures, more so than men, for evolutionary reasons. These penalties do not apply to males who have a lot of sex. As a result, the utmost tragedy of the sexist system put in place by religion and society to control women's libido is that males have a harder time getting sex than they would if they returned to pre-civilization eras when women were wild and uninhibited. In today's world, it's your job as a man to get beyond a woman's social training and bring out the natural woman within her. Does it appear to be difficult? It isn't. Believe me, women are similar like padlocks in several ways. If you use the wrong keys, they appear impossible to open. But once you discover the correct key, they open quickly, and, absolutely, you are capable of completing this task. I'll show you how to do it. You must always bear in mind that, on a subliminal level, ladies enjoy sex and want it as much, if not more than we want it, to bring out the natural lady that is deep within each woman. And, as if societal indoctrination wasn't awful enough, women are also exposed to a more potent force: their nature. Every woman understands that children are a perfectly normal result of sex, and she understands that if she gets pregnant when she isn't meant to, everyone would notice. Women's greatest misfortune is that, despite their love for sex, they can't be open about their sexuality without being considered a slut. As a sexual man, you must keep her from feeling like a slut while directing your encounters with women toward sex. By the way, being discreet with ladies is entirely up to you. Being like the approval-seeking beta males who brag to their mates about the women they've brought to bed is the last thing on your mind. You don't need your peers' praise, so skip the locker room conversation. That isn't something that real men have to do. Have you ever had a conversation with a man who said, "We men will never understand gentlewomen"? Ladies aren't as odd or difficult to follow as those guys believe. They're also not as different from us as some of us might believe, because we know that women crave sex. It's fine if you put sex on your agenda when you engage with them. In fact, it's a fantastic idea. Verbalizing their intentions, on the other hand, is something you should avoid at all costs. You do not want to mention anything to the woman about sex or his attempt to have it. You activate the rational portion of a woman's mind whenever you disclose your sexual intentions with her by mentioning something about him, prompting her social conditioning to surge. She thinks to herself, oh, this person is obnoxious and disgusting, and it gives me the shivers. And I couldn't possibly wind up as a slut here. So avoid being explicit about sex. Keep in mind how much women like sex in the back of your mind, and concentrate on increasing sexuality without saying anything about it. Instead of using your mouth, use your body language. What women appreciate. Don't listen to what women say about the kind of guys they like. Instead, observe their behavior and the types of men they seem to gravitate toward. If a woman were honest, she would declare she prefers a sexual man who will create a chance for sex and will persevere despite my boundaries. She is afraid that someone will call her a slut, so she won't say it. Women enjoy partnerships, but they do not require a male to do so. After all, women's friendships with other women are extremely close. I can't stress this enough. Women want a man who can provide them with excellent sex. And here's another biological fact. In sex, women usually play the passive role. This means that you, the man, must assume responsibility for the sex by preparing the session thoroughly. Don't force her to take command. Consider this. She lives in constant fear of being considered a slut, and you're waiting for her to start sex. It's no surprise that so many men have problems going to bed. Waiting for anything like that is too much. The woman isn't going to act on that plan to get her to bed. You'll need to establish an environment where she believes she can have sex with you without fear of repercussions. Last month, for example, I met a woman at happy hour. We talked for a couple of hours on various issues, which I shall expose later to be a fantastic woman's conversationalist. We get along swimmingly, and then she informs me she had a boyfriend. 2 hours into our talk, he could have reacted in a number of ways at this time. Most types would. Be enraged and leave her, unhappy at how the woman had brought this about. Be trying to persuade the female to dump the other guy by talking to her. Most males would have gone with option O or option B. That's something I'm sure of because I've done it myself. Instead, I've discovered that reacting calmly, maintaining my alpha male composure, and demonstrating that what she said didn't get me out of control is the best option. It's good, I exclaimed later. When you're not with me, he'll keep you occupied. She joked that it was a watershed moment between us that night. I'm not usually drawn to girls who have boyfriends, but she'd been flirting with this guy at a pub for 2 hours. How wonderful could that connection be? By the way, if a woman approaches you and is in a relationship, believe me when I say that if she doesn't have sex with you, she'll find another male to flirt with and satisfy her carnal desires. She wouldn't be flirting with other guys if her current partner wouldn't. As the night proceeded, the ideal opportunity to visit my home arose. She was a big fan of the royal family of the United Kingdom, so I told her about my magazine collection from my summer in England. I told her, come see them, of course. Once I was in my apartment, it was simply a matter of me maintaining control of the situation and allowing her to gradually warm up sexually. She chose to depart at 2 a.m., not wanting to spend the night. She had just ever desired sex from me, with no attachments attached. She was well aware that no one would ever know what we were up to that night. To put it another way, sex without repercussions. That's what women want. You've probably heard of women on vacation who want to get out of town and have some fun. Have you ever wondered why they do what they do? It's because they're not going to be called sluts, and there's no responsibility for them, because the circumstances are ideal. Sex occurs naturally. No one in her city will ever know that a woman thousands of kilometers away from home can satisfy her sexual urges. Don't tell anyone exactly what you're going to do. Humans have a certain mating ritual that they follow. This is something akin to a long-distance dance. For sex to occur, the mating ritual must follow the proper procedures. We males have an awful inclination to constantly try to clarify the situation by asking the woman what is going on, where everything is between them, and how she feels about having sex. This is a tremendous blunder. Never say anything to a woman about where you are in the mating ceremony. Do not express your intentions to him directly. Men behave in this manner because it is reasonable. Sensations are killed by logic, and passions are required for a woman to be sexually receptive to you. Don't mention your intentions to have sex. Instead, make it appear as if the two of you had sex on the spur of the moment. It will keep the emotional part of her brain active while the rational part of her brain is turned off. And that's a wonderful thing, since it's your logical mind telling you no. If you approach her like a true gentleman with whom she has a real connection, she will justify in her mind that you are an exception to her rule of not having sex on a first date. It might surprise you. The truth about women's love and sex. Women are far too complex. Women have a lot of requirements. I have no idea what women are thinking. This is something you hear all the time. And, to be honest, that makes perfect sense. Others argue that it's easier to raise your hands and refer to women as black boxes that can't be understood rather than trying to wrap their heads around women who can. Here's what you need to know about women. And the good news is that they're creatures at first, and highly sexual on a biological level. Indeed, they are likely to value sex much more than we do. Have you ever noticed how much more women groan during sex than men? What every woman is afraid to live, and the trick to alleviate this anxiety and get them to do anything you ask. Regrettably, society teaches women that it is bad to enjoy sex in the relevant part of their minds, not the emotional part. Labels like slut or prostitute have a severe negative impact on women since they manage to be social creatures, more so than men, for evolutionary reasons. These penalties do not apply to males who have a lot of sex. As a result, the utmost tragedy of the sexist system put in place by religion and society to control women's libido is that males have a harder time getting sex than they would if they returned to pre-civilization eras when women were wild and uninhibited. In today's world, it's your job as a man to get beyond a woman's social training and bring out the natural woman within her. Does it appear to be difficult? It isn't. Believe me, women are similar like padlocks in several ways. If you use the wrong keys, they appear impossible to open. But once you discover the correct key, they open quickly. And, absolutely, you are capable of completing this task. I'll show you how to do it. You must always bear in mind that, on a subliminal level, ladies enjoy sex and want it as much, if not more than we want it, to bring out the natural lady that is deep within each woman. And, as if societal indoctrination wasn't awful enough, women are also exposed to a more potent force: their nature. Every woman understands that children are a perfectly normal result of sex, and she understands that if she gets pregnant when she isn't meant to, everyone would notice. Women's greatest misfortune is that, despite their love for sex, they can't be open about their sexuality without being considered a slut. As a sexual man, you must keep her from feeling like a slut while directing your encounters with women toward sex. By the way, being discreet with ladies is entirely up to you. Being like the approval-seeking beta males who brag to their mates about the women they've brought to bed is the last thing on your mind. You don't need your peers' praise, so skip the locker room conversation. That isn't something that real men have to do. Have you ever had a conversation with a man who said, "We men will never understand gentlewomen"? Ladies aren't as odd or difficult to follow as those guys believe. They're also not as different from us as some of us might believe, because we know that women crave sex. It's fine if you put sex on your agenda when you engage with them. In fact, it's a fantastic idea. Verbalizing their intentions, on the other hand, is something you should avoid at all costs. You do not want to mention anything to the woman about sex or his attempt to have it. You activate the rational portion of a woman's mind whenever you disclose your sexual intentions with her by mentioning something about him, prompting her social conditioning to surge. She thinks to herself, oh, this person is obnoxious and disgusting, and it gives me the shivers. And I couldn't possibly wind up as a slut here. So avoid being explicit about sex. Keep in mind how much women like sex in the back of your mind, and concentrate on increasing sexuality without saying anything about it. Instead of using your mouth, use your body language. What women appreciate. Don't listen to what women say about the kind of guys they like. Instead, observe their behavior and the types of men they seem to gravitate toward. If a woman were honest, she would declare she prefers a sexual man who will create a chance for sex and will persevere despite my boundaries. She is afraid that someone will call her a slut. so she won't say it. Women enjoy partnerships, but they do not require a male to do so. After all, women's friendships with other women are extremely close. I can't stress this enough. Women want a man who can provide them with excellent sex. And here's another biological fact. In sex, women usually play the passive role. This means that you, the man, must assume responsibility for the sex by preparing the session thoroughly. Don't force her to take command. Consider this. She lives in constant fear of being considered a slut, and you're waiting for her to start sex. It's no surprise that so many men have problems going to bed. Waiting for anything like that is too much. The woman isn't going to act on that plane to get her to bed. You'll need to establish an environment where she believes she can have sex with you without fear of repercussions. Last month, for example, I met a woman at happy hour. We talked for a couple of hours on various issues, which I shall expose later to be a fantastic woman's conversationalist. We get along swimmingly, and then she informs me she had a boyfriend. 2 hours into our talk, he could have reacted in a number of ways at this time. Most types would. I'd be enraged and leave her, unhappy at how the woman had brought this about. Be trying to persuade the female to dump the other guy by talking to her. Most males would have gone with option O or option B. That's something I'm sure of because I've done it myself. Instead, I've discovered that reacting calmly, maintaining my alpha male composure, and demonstrating that what she said didn't get me out of control is the best option. It's good, I exclaimed later. When you're not with me, he'll keep you occupied. She joked that it was a watershed moment between us that night. I'm not usually drawn to girls who have boyfriends, but she'd been flirting with this guy at a pub for 2 hours. How wonderful could that connection be? By the way, if a woman approaches you and is in a relationship, believe me when I say that if she doesn't have sex with you, she'll find another male to flirt with and satisfy her carnal desires. She wouldn't be flirting with other guys if her current partner wouldn't. As the night proceeded, the ideal opportunity to visit my home arose. She was a big fan of the royal family of the United Kingdom, so I told her about my magazine collection from my summer in England. I told her, come see them, of course. Once I was in my apartment, it was simply a matter of me maintaining control of the situation and allowing her to gradually warm up sexually. She chose to depart at 2 a.m., not wanting to spend the night. She had just ever desired sex from me, with no attachments attached. She was well aware that no one would ever know what we were up to that night. To put it another way, sex without repercussions. That's what women want. You've probably heard of women on vacation who want to get out of town and have some fun. Have you ever wondered why they do what they do? It's because they're not going to be called sluts, and there's no responsibility for them. Because the circumstances are ideal. Sex occurs naturally. No one in her city will ever know that a woman thousands of kilometers away from home can satisfy her sexual urges. Don't tell anyone exactly what you're going to do. Humans have a certain mating ritual that they follow. This is something akin to a long-distance dance. For sex to occur, the mating ritual must follow the proper procedures. We males have an awful inclination to constantly try to clarify the situation by asking the woman what is going on, where everything is between them, and how she feels about having sex. This is a tremendous blunder. Never say anything to a woman about where you are in the mating ceremony. Do not express your intentions to him directly. Men behave in this manner because it is reasonable. Sensations are killed by logic, and passions are required for a woman to be sexually receptive to you. Don't mention your intentions to have sex. Instead, make it appear as if the two of you had sex on the spur of the moment. It will keep the emotional part of her brain active while the rational part of her brain is turned off. And that's a wonderful thing since it's your logical mind telling you no. If you approach her like a true gentleman with whom she has a real connection, she will justify in her mind that you are an exception to her rule of not having sex on a first date. Remember, for a woman, a good time is good sex with a man, and she wants you to take charge. The most common dating mistakes men make and how to avoid them. My coworker acquired his first girlfriend when he was only 23 years old. Despite the fact that he was only a law student at the time, he spent more than $3,000 on the lady in just a month, investing in cheap wines, restaurants, and other useless gifts. Despite the fact that he slept with her multiple times over that brief period, she moved on to another man. My friend was distraught for months following. Not to mention the fact that he needed to obtain a part-time job to make ends meet. I've been there and done that before. Dinners, movies, etc. took up a lot of my time. I even bought a $500 ring with money I had saved since high school. On our first date, I would usually buy the girl a $30 arrangement of flowers. All that money spent, with little to show for it. I only wanted to sleep with her as a result of the bargain. It sounded like a straightforward deal. The girl would get the things I gave her, and all she had to do in return was spread her legs. Does this ring a bell? Are you annoyed because you can't sleep after spending so much money? So, here's the deal, you're based on a faulty premise. The amount of money spent does not always equate to the opening of the legs. The issue with wasting money on a woman who hasn't earned it is the message it sends. And it communicates to her, loud and clear, that her worth is higher than hers, so you need to buy it to get her approval. Okay, I know my worth is less than yours. How about a dozen roses, an elegant supper, and some very good diamond earrings? It's like saying, do you see what I'm getting at? However, if you know how valuable she is, you won't need to buy her favor. I understand that saying don't buy anything for girls goes against what we guys logically think, and what we haven't all been taught. After all, we've been trained to believe that if we want something badly enough, we'll go to any length to get it. Right. That is true in the case of inanimate objects that do not think for themselves. However, this is not the case for women. Consider the average super hot lady. Most men see her as extremely valuable, and as a result, they bow down to her and adore the ground on which she walks. She walks inside a store and discovers that her money is insufficient. But what kind of man would a woman like that fall for? Typically, someone with a high social status does not believe it is necessary to purchase you items in order to alleviate your fears. Oh, sure, he'll do it after he's got her, so she'll have wonderful things to show off, but not while he's taking